Once again, welcome to the channel, Moments That Moved Me, where you get true, lesser known life stories that inspire and offer a deep emotional connection. These could be tales of resilience, small acts of kindness, moments of unexpected bravery, or unique personal journeys that aren't widely told. Each story can be wrapped in a thoughtful, reflective tone aimed at making listeners pause and reflect. Story number 1. The Unspoken Apology. In a small cafe in 2007, a waitress named Chloe noticed a regular customer, an elderly man named Mr. Taylor, always sitting alone, quietly sipping his coffee. He seemed to carry a heavy sadness, and one day Chloe mustered the courage to ask if he was okay. After a long pause, Mr. Taylor opened up about how he had lost touch with his son years ago over a bitter argument. "I never got the chance to apologize," he said, his voice cracking. Chloe didn't know what to say, but something stirred inside her. Later that evening, after her shift, she found an old notebook and wrote a letter. It wasn't from her, but rather from the perspective of Mr. Taylor, apologizing to his son for their fight. The next time Mr. Taylor came in, Chloe slipped the letter to him and suggested he read it. Tears welled up in his eyes as he read the words. A week later, Mr. Taylor didn't show up at the cafe. Chloe was worried until days later he returned, smiling for the first time. "I called him," Mr. Taylor said softly. "We talked and we're going to meet next week." Chloe's small act of empathy helped Mr. Taylor heal what he thought was an unfixable rift. Story number 2. The Forgotten Hero. In 1974, a young boy named David found himself caught in a fire that had engulfed his apartment building. With smoke filling the halls and panic setting in, he was terrified and unsure how to escape. Just as the flames began to close in, a firefighter burst through the door, scooped him up, and carried him to safety. David never saw the man's face, as it was covered by a helmet and mask, but he would never forget that day. He grew up with the immense gratitude for the man who saved his life, and every year on the anniversary of the fire, David sent a letter to the local fire station thanking the team for their bravery. 40 years later, while attending a community event honoring local firefighters, David met an old retired fireman named Joe. They got to talking, and when David shared his story, Joe quietly smiled. "I was there," Joe said. "I remember you." David was stunned. For decades, he had been searching for the identity of his hero, only to discover that Joe had retired in obscurity, never seeking recognition. But to David, Joe was a legend. He had quietly changed his life forever. Story number 3. The Coin That Crossed the World. In 1968, a young woman named Anne received a simple silver coin from her grandfather before he passed away. He told her, "Keep this with you always, and it will bring you good luck." Anne didn't think much of it at the time, but she carried the coin in her pocket for years as she traveled the world through good times and bad. During a trip to India in the early 80s, Anne found herself short on money in a small village. She was stranded and unsure of how she would get back to the city. As she sat on the side of the road, worried and alone, she absent-mindedly reached for the coin in her pocket. A local man noticed her distress and asked what was wrong. She explained her situation, and when she showed him the coin, his eyes lit up. The man explained that he had a similar coin passed down through his family, and it was a symbol of protection and good fortune. Moved by the coincidence, the man offered to help Anne return to the city. Years later, Anne found herself reflecting on that moment and how one small, seemingly insignificant object could cross cultures, bringing people together in unexpected ways. Once again, I'd like to thank everyone for joining me today for 3 true short stories to jumpstart your day. Thanks again for watching, and please be sure to join me next time when we upload 3 more true short stories here in the